Hello and welcome to part 4 of the Spähwagen build. Pretty much let's just crack on and get straight on with it. No, I'm not going to do it that one because every man, woman, his dog has done that trio colour. I'm going to do it this one. So let's crack on with the first bit, masking. Yes, I know it's boring and tedious, but it needs to be done. Pretty much what I've done is I shoved some Tamiya tweezers, I think the Tamiya tweezers, through the middle of the Tamiya tape there, and I'm going to back mask off the inside because I've already sprayed the inside and done everything. Pushing it on the back with the tweezers is a bit of a no-no because I'm going to scratch the paint. Stop that, you silly imbecile. Yes, I'm going to use a cotton bud, as you can see there, just bent it, and I can just push the Tamiya tape from the back onto the inside, just a bit safer that way. At least I'm not going to chip the paintwork. So then I can move on to masking the engine bay. And as you can pretty much see here, I'm using something completely different. I'm not using the normal Tamiya masking tape. I'm using just normal rag white paper, cut to strips, and I can push and fit that between the engine and the upper deck. Now, to be honest with you, it was a tight fit. So a bit of a jiggery pokery, and you can get it to fit into there like so. So I sped it up for you, as you can see. So when it's in there, to be honest with you, when you're spraying, at least for me anyway, 25 psi, there's not really going to be an issue of spraying this back out. Now for biggest hole in the world, now for those who didn't actually understand that, for the biggest hole in the world, what I'm going to do is back mask like I did off everything else. Now pretty much I've done the same with the back because we don't need overspray in our back ends, do we? And also I've had to fill a bit of a gap just there, so pretty much I've done that. And also that bit that I mentioned earlier, I put some foam in there, as you can see it's taped up, and I didn't get any overspray, which is quite good. Now with that boring bit out of the way, we can get on to the bit which this video is titled painting. Now, I'm going to use my go-to primer XF19 using Attacker C44, and I've made a mix which I got from a magazine, and it's a lighter Dunkelgelb. So used XF4, XF60, 55 and XF2. Now, pretty much priming. Yes, I know it's another boring subject and this, that and the other, but it needs to be talked about, especially when it comes to attackers. So if you are overly touching certain areas and are going to be masking on those said areas as well, then you definitely need to get some primer on that. So I don't need to over explain this. I'll see you on the other side. Cheerio, see you in a bit. So next up, Basecoat C44 Attacker. And I don't really need to talk too much about this, to be honest with you. It's just spraying a colour on. Now, one thing I do need to say is that if you're spraying with what I've done here, I've built the kit as a wanner. If you're spraying, say, the running gear and this, that and the other on the subframe, don't overcoat it in one direction because you've got to go 360 all the way around it. So light coats to begin with, and then subsequent heavier coats as you go along. So again, I'm going to see you in a bit. See you shortly on the other side. So, following on from the applied base coat, as you can see there, I've already kind of started the weathering process on one side. There's a lot more to come after this. Now, what I've used is Tamiya XF2 mixed with the Attacker paint and the leveling thinning. Yes, it does all mix together very nice, not a problem whatsoever with that. Now, one thing to note is, before I actually start talking about what I'm doing here, is that when I'm mixing the white with the Attacker Dunkelgelb, is that I probably start off with probably 2-3 drops of white and then progressively go lighter and lighter. And the lighter they go, the less that I spray, the less areas, because I don't want it to make it look too over complicated, over stark, you know what I mean. But either way, so what I'm doing here is I'm just thinking of areas where the crew are going to be touching, over weathering boots on the deck and things like that, and also sun bleaching. So I'm using different techniques. I'm using like a mottling technique. I'm spraying edges. Edges are going to be the most weathered, and this, that, and the other, and they can break up the vehicle a bit more. And also I'm doing a sort of streaking effects, so make it look like rain marks and things like that. So at this point, I'm going to leave you with me doing this. I will see you again very shortly. Ta-ra! Right, now it's time for the next colour, and in this case I'm going to be using the chocolate brown. But one thing to note is just make sure your previous colour is around about right. It doesn't need to be perfect because you can do some more post shading. Now, next thing to do is to spray this one, and I'm going to show you how I spray that. So just to explain a few things before we crack on. First thing is the consistency of paint. I thin it around about semi-skim milk. I've got no percentages written down. I don't think of anything like that, to be honest with you. So I just leave it like that. Maybe thin it a bit more, to be honest with you, but I just test it before I actually start spraying and just make sure that I don't get any overspray or that speckly feel on the paintwork. So that's what I do. Pressure 25 psi. I don't change my psi for anything. I just leave it at 25, and that is that. So that's what I do. One thing also that I'm doing is I'm freehanding this camo scheme, and I'm actually following some of the reference material that I've seen that looks like it's got a freehand feel to it. It looks like it's just been sprayed as is. There's no masking involved whatsoever. So that's what I'm doing. If you've seen whatever you're painting and it's hard edged, then mask it. You can use any materials as you wish. You can use Tamiya tape, you can use white tack. I won't use blue tack because it's too tacky. It might leave, and it has for me, problems with your paint later on. So I'd leave that out. You can use that sort of science putty stuff. That's what I would particularly do, and that'll be fine. And going back to what I said earlier about freehanding, and we're going to see it in a minute, I orientate the instructions to the way that I spray. So you're going to see where it curls round, I need to line it to my airbrush so that I've got it in my head that that's the way that it's going to go, and I can follow the instructions all the way around. So I basically move the instructions all the way around the camo scheme. And also I'm spraying at a 45-degree angle away from the Dunkelgelb towards what I'm spraying to. Now, the best analogy I've got for that is by looking at a graph. So if you've got a normal graph with an X and Y axes, if you take the vertical one off from the left-hand side and put it into the middle of the bottom axis, you've got basically the bottom axis is now cut in two. The one on the right is the Dunkelgelb, the one on the left is the chocolate brown. and I've got the airbrush, and the middle line basically is where I want the line to be, and I'm spraying the airbrush down from the Dunkelgelb side to the chocolate brown side, if that makes sense. And now it's time to start backfilling in with the chocolate brown. You can use the same consistency of paintwork that you already had in the airbrush. I particularly do anyway, especially when you're closer to the freehand, what you've just applied. Now, you need to be careful at this stage, because the consequence is that with the consistency of paint that you've got, the chances are that you're going to get sort of runs, you're going to overspray certain areas, and it's going to look too dark. What you need to do is to feather it from one colour to the next. You don't want it too dark in certain areas. You want it all nice all the way round. Now, to achieve this, you just need to spray a very, very thin and just build it up in layers very slowly, and use the previous paint, what I'm doing here, as in the Dunkelgelb, as like a sort of pre-shade, and I'm just sort of mottling, lightening as I go along and trying to feather it out as I go along. And I must admit, you can actually thicken it up as you go along, as further you get away from your freehand, so that you're just not working so hard. And that is basically what I do. So again, I'm going to leave you with this. See you in a bit. Well, do you know what? I don't think that's looking too bad, to be honest with you. Yes, I had a bit of a blob there. I know, knob, thank you. But either way, the rest of the vehicle was actually painted the same way that I showed you earlier. The other thing is that I think the actual Dunkelgelb is a bit too light compared to the chocolate brown. But either way, so I used Attacker's 250, which is a bit darker, and I went over and slightly darkened a few areas and went into some dark areas and this, that and the other, all the way around, as you can see there, just to tone it down a bit. Doesn't matter a bit too much of the overspray onto the chocolate brown, because that can be a bit more of a feathered effect and this, that and the other, and you can spray back over the top with the chocolate brown and come back in with that. But either way, I'm going to Scarpa. I'll see you on the other side. Cheerio. Again, same process as I mentioned earlier, but this time it's used for the engine covers. So pretty much what I've done is pushed them down, and I'm going to spray over the top of them. So I don't need to talk over this one because it's self-explanatory. But either way, I'm going to leave you with this. See you in a bit. So next thing I did was to paint this red primer base between the demarcation line, just to feather it out a bit more. And to be honest with you, it wasn't my idea. It was Lenny's from RTBModels. And when he said it, I went, yeah, right, like that's going to work. And then when I did it, I was like, all right then. But I'm not going to say it. I'm going to leave these guys to say it, because they can say it a lot better than me.
What a guy. What a guy. What a guy.
Oh dear, that gets better every time I watch that. Who thinks Red Dwarf was absolutely brilliant? I do anyway. So let's crack on with the rest of the build. So pretty much, as you can see, I'm spraying all this down. So I'm going to leave you with me doing this, and I'm going to go and wait and watch some Red Dwarf. I'll see you in a bit. Bye. Right, next up is using the chocolate brown and the Dunkelgelb as a mix just to lighten everything up. Give it a bit of weathering on the side, looks like dust effects and things like that. I shouldn't really be doing it on this video, I should be doing it on the weathering video, which is the next one. But to be fair, I'm using Attacker paint, so I thought I'd leave this one in. And to be honest with you, it's quite self-explanatory. So obviously the next video is going to be using washers and things like that. But anyway, I'm going to again leave you with me doing this, and I am going to Scarpa. Ta-ra. Oh, we're nearly there, nearly finished the paint work. So this is the point where I can get rid of all the masking tape and get rid of literally everything, because yes, I'm not going to get any overspray anymore. And also, as you can see, I haven't got any chip paint, so that is the advantage of priming, especially when it comes to attackers. Next thing, I'd already sprayed this and this, that and the other, so I've done the gun, which you're going to see in a second. But now, pretty much I painted that all the same steps as the rest of the chassis, so that looks very nice. Next thing to do is to, yes, again, it's weathering, but to be honest with you, I'm spraying it on, so I thought, well, I'll do it on this part because it's painting, is using a red-brown mix and black. So I've mixed that together and I'm just spraying shadow areas around doors and things like that. So again, pretty much I'm going to leave you with this, as you know the drill, and I'll see you again on the other side. So see you in a bit. So finally in this video, it's time to weather the wheels using the same technique as I used before, using, I believe, Tamiya XF64 and a Tamiya flat black. So that is that done. Anyway, I just want to say thank you for watching this video and the other 3 prior ones, and I'll see you on the next one. Weathering. Cheerio.